So, the topic of the day is Bhav and Rasa. Now, I am going to first introduce the theory as it is given in the Natya Shastra and as it has been followed for, let us say, last 2500 years in India, through the length and breadth of India, and has been followed not just in drama or Natya, for which it was primarily stated in the Natya Shastra, but in all arts, as I said. Because Natya is an art which has all other arts in it. It has music in it, it has dance in it, it has painting in it, it has sculptural elements in it, and it could be called very correctly the mother of all arts. So, what applies to Natya or what applies to the aesthetics of Natya applies actually to all arts by extension. This is the traditional Indian view. Now, I'm going to first give you the theory as it is stated in the Natya Shastra, and then I'm going to talk about the relevance of this theory to our contemporary life, to the application of this theory in arts as they are practiced even now. Because sometimes people tend to think that this was something of the past and this applies to ancient drama, or this applies to classical, and they often call it classical Sanskrit drama, and this does not apply to, let us say, modern day films or painting or music, and the aesthetics of modern life is different. So, I am going to take up that subject also and try to convince you, I hope I succeed, that it applies to art as it is practiced now, and art today can benefit a lot from these ancient theories and about the practices as were conducted in ancient times. So let us then begin with the theory. Now the topic of the day is Bhav and Rasa. So these are two things. Bhav, what is Bhav? How does it translate into modern English or into modern Hindi or any other Indian language? Does it mean feeling? Or does it mean just emotion? Does it mean something more than this? Because a very natural question arises, that is it possible for a human being to have an emotion without an accompanying thought? Let us say I am sad right now. But isn't there going to be a cause for sadness? Can I be sad without a cause? Definitely there will be a reason for me to be sad. So there is an element of thought in it. I'm thinking about something. I'm thinking about a situation, a relationship, or a possibility of some kind, and that is accompanied by the emotion which is expressed through my face, through my actions, or the emotion that I feel, as the example I'm giving you right now, it is the emotion of sadness, or it is the emotion of pity or compassion called karuna. So, when we translate the word bhav, we should not just think of it as feeling or emotion or sentiment. You see, this is a very common mistake. If you go to any contemporary translation of the word bhav in the context of Natya Shastra, say on the internet or in a standard book, even by scholars, great scholars, you will find that the translation is sentiment, feeling, something like that, which means only emotion, no thought. Now, this is not true, because the very word bhav comes from the root bhu, which is being, to be. And as I said, that you cannot have a feeling without a thought, and you cannot have a thought without a feeling. So both of these are interconnected, and because they are interconnected, therefore bhav is a representation of what you think and feel at a given time. It is denoted by an emotion, but along with that emotion there is always a thought regarding my situation at that moment, regarding the event that is happening at that moment. So bhav is thought and feeling. Now here let me talk about a psychological theory which was put forth by Bharat Muni long time back when the Natya Shastra was compiled. The Natya Shastra was compiled around 500 BC. Most people think it was 200 AD or 300 or 400 AD, but that is patently false. Such dates don't make any sense. I have in my book called Dramatic Concepts, Greek and Indian, and it's a book which you can easily find in your library because it is present in most libraries. Now in that book I have shown that the date of contemporary available Natya Shastra is going back to 500 BC. And the tradition holds that before this Natya Shastra, compiled, collected, redacted by Bharat Muni, there was a earlier Natya Shastra similarly collected by the elder Bharat Muni. So there was a Vriddha Bharat, an elder Bharat, and then the younger Bharat. And the text which we read now is that of the younger one, younger Bharat Muni, and that is something which reached this kind of a almost final stage around 500 BC. Now, when this text was written, the primary purpose of this text was to talk about the art of theatre, the art of drama. Why did drama come into existence? How did drama come into existence? What was the purpose of it? And it is in that context that Bharat Muni propounded a certain theory of emotion, thought, feeling, relationship of human ideas and feelings to life. Now he made a categorization. He said that bhavas are of different kinds. He said there are certain permanent bhavas, or there are certain emotions which are steadfast, which are called by the Sanskrit term sthai. That is, they are always present in the human heart. Everybody would be constantly feeling them very easily and very strongly. And these were the 8 emotions which get translated into 8 rasas. So he said that there are primarily 4 which give birth to another 4. So he said there is Shringar and Hasya. There is a shloka which says, Shringarat Bhaved Hasyo. Shringar, the erotic feeling, the relationship between man and woman, the relationship of love, sexual love, love which is any kind of a deep attachment. It may not necessarily be sexual, but something which is related to very worldly relationship and bodily relationship, including that of a mother and child. So he said, Bharat Muni, that it is the erotic feeling, Shringar. And when you have Shringar, then you have the possibility of Hasya or laughter. So Shringarat Bhaved Hasyo, Raudratcha Karuno Rasaha. And out of Raudra, or a feeling in which you want to destroy everything, you want to simply be the great destroyer, that is called Raudra. And when you act as a destroyer, then the consequence of your action is that you hurt somebody, and when you see the suffering of somebody, then you pity that person. So, Raudracha Karuno Rasa. Raudra is the action which causes the consequence of Karuna, compassion, pity. So that makes 4. Shringarat Bhavedhasyo Raudratcha Karunurasa Virat Adbhudotpattihi. If somebody who is a great hero, somebody who is capable of very special power and of an act which others can't do, then he is called Veer. Now that act of heroism, when it is seen in certain action of the hero, then it arouses wonder in us. And therefore Virat Adbhudotpattihi. So Rama made a great bridge across the ocean. So it was unprecedented. It had not been done earlier. It was a great heroic task. And when people saw it, then they were astonished that yes, this can happen. So Virat Adbhudotpattihi and Bibhatsatcha Bhayanaka. Bibhats is the feeling of disgust, the feeling of an absolute repulsion. When you see things being destroyed, when you see dead bodies lying, when you see a lot of blood flowing, then you are disgusted. And that arouses fear. So, Bibhatsatcha Bhayanakaha. And this is how the 8 primary emotions or sthai bhavas were enunciated by Bharat Muni. Then he said, these are the bhavas which would be there in the human heart all the time. Everybody would immediately feel them, constantly keep feeling one or the other. And then there are 33 others like alasya, moha, stambha, that is feeling lazy, feeling jealous, feeling not up to the mark, depressed, etc., etc. And he enumerates 33 of them. And he says that these are feelings which come and go. Because you don't feel lazy all the time. You may feel lazy for some time. You may have alasya for some time. Or you may not be able to think correctly, which is mother. But that kind of a feeling doesn't continue for hours and hours or for sufficient length of time. It is a passing feeling. So the 33, he said, are asthai or vyabhichari or sanchari. There are 2-3 names for it, which means they are transient. They are not dominant emotions. And then he said there are 8 other feelings which are highly mental, like mental feelings which cause a certain amount of physical effect on the body. They are not specific feelings like the ones we have enumerated, but they are actually consequences of strong feelings as seen on the face. For instance, horripilation, that is when the hair rise on the end, or swelling of the nostril, or the face becoming colorless. Now these things can happen not because of a single emotion. They can happen because of one emotion at one time, another emotion at another time. It may happen out of fear, it may happen even out of wonder, it may happen out of some other emotion. So technically these 8 called sattvic bhavas, they are not feelings, thought feelings per se, but they are effects of a strong mental state on your face and on your body. So that if you are very much afraid deeply, then your hands will shake, your complexion would change, and so forth. Now this is the primary presumption about what is bhava. I have given you the theory in psychological terms. Now how are we going to relate it to theatre? How are we going to relate it to a practical art, to a performance, something that happens in a story which is shown on the stage, or in a story which you read in a book, or which is recited to you? So, how is this applied? So, on the stage, because that's the primary example, the example given is something like this. They say that bhava, or the feeling, is depicted, shown, or represented in somebody. That is, in a person. In a story, on the stage, the bhava would be in a character. You see, the character of Ravana, the character of Lakshmana, the character of Sita, or somebody like that, isn't it? That bhava, that feeling, that thinking would be available to us in a person. And we will think that it is this person who by certain actions is feeling those emotions or those bhavas. Because they can't be in abstraction. Even when you read a story, then you imagine. When you see a play, then you see it with your eyes on the stage. But when you read a story, or when a story is recited to you, then you imagine certain events happening. Then you imagine the activity of persons who are narrated in that story. Now, Bharat Muni made a further classification. He said these are emotions, thought emotions, ideas that a person has, but there is a carrier for them. And he said that carrier is called Vibhav. Vibhav is the person who expresses them. Vibhav is the person who shows them. Vibhav is the person who displays them on the stage so that the audience can see it and feel it and participate in it. Right? So that person is called Vibhav. Vibhavyate iti vibhava. The one who expands that emotion. In simple language, the one who does the acting. The one who does the task of communicating. One who is doing the acting or the abhinay. Who is carrying these emotions from the stage to the audience. Abhinay is carrying something from the stage or the cinematographic scene to the watchers, to the audience, to the sahridayas. So that act is done by the actor. What we in modern language is called abhineta. In ancient language we called it nata. And the action is called abhinaya. That is taking a feeling. Abhinaya is taking the feeling from the stage to the audience. Yasmat prayogam nayate tasmat abhinaya smritaha. That is the one who carries a feeling from the stage to the audience is the abhineta, and he is doing abhinay. Abhinay or the abhineta is also referred to or defined by another term as vibhav. So vibhav is this technical terms. Now let me recapitulate. There is bhava, thought emotion, which is felt by a person. That person is called vibhav, one who brings it to us by certain actions or acting from the stage to us, the people who are watching. Now, in order to communicate, that person makes certain actions. If the person is sad, then the person would bend. If the person is happy, the character would laugh. If he is angry, he would shout. Now, all these actions are called anubhav. Why anubhav? Because they follow bhava. How do they follow? They follow in the sense that when somebody is seized with an emotion, with a bhava, then his or her body behaves in a particular manner. As I just said that if somebody is wonderstruck, then the eyes will open large, the eyes will open this way. And when you see that, then you say, this is wonder. The person is full of wonder. That is called anubhav. So now we have three things. Bhav, vibhav and anubhav. And remember, bhav is already categorized as of two kinds, sthai and sanchari or vyabhichari. So we have, in other words, two kinds of bhavas. Vibhav, the one who is communicating these two. Anubhava, which are the actions of the vibhava. So the 2, 3, 4 things are there on the stage. Two kinds of bhavas, vibhava and anubhava. In order to describe that, there is the truth of your watching theatre. I have described to you how feeling is communicated from the stage to the audience, right? I mean that's the whole idea. How feeling is communicated from the actor, from the stage to the audience. But the question is, why do you want this feeling to be communicated? So rasa nishpatti, this is the last word. Tatra vibhav anubhav vyavichar samyogat rasa nishpatti. This is the meaning of this is the Rasa Sutra. This is the structure and this is what it means. Now let us take let us take these words one by one. What does Tatra means? Tatra means there. And what are they referring to there here? There means in theatre, in Natya. So in Natya there is Rasa Nishpatti, or the arising of rasa. Now how does this arising of rasa take place? This is the fundamental question. So they say that tatra in Natya, this takes place because of a combination or a sanyoga. Sanyogat. Sanyog means coming together. Coming together of what? Vibhav, Anubhav and Vyavichari. These three things. There, that is on the stage, Tatra, Vibhav, Anubhav and Vyavicharis, these three when they combine, then there is rasa. So it's a little difficult to understand. But let's go about it again. As I explained to you, Vibhav is the actor. Anubhav are all those gestures which the actor makes. And the actor is showing all those Vyabhichari bhavas and the sthai bhavas there. Here in the sutra, the word bhava is missing, but it should be taken in implication, because they cannot be just Vyabhichari bhavas or transient bhavas unless there are the sthai bhavas. So in art, on the stage, it is the combination of the action of the actor and his feeling the emotion and displaying that emotion through various gestures, through that art of abhinay, which depicts the bhavas and the vyabhichari bhavas. And it is depicted in such a beautiful manner that you feel that the activity is full of rasa. So rasa nishpatti, or arising of rasa, takes place in this manner. So let me kind of repeat this whole thing. The sutra tatra vibhavanubhav vyabhichari samyogat ras nishpatti, which is in sandhi viched like tatra vibhav anubhav vyabhichari samyogat ras nishpatti. So there is ras nishpatti, there is arising of rasa, there is tasting of rasa by the audience, and I am sure by the actor also. When there is a union between vibhav, anubhav and vyabhichari bhav, translated into simple language, by the activity of the actor, which is those gestures which express bhavas, Vyavichari bhavas and sthai bhavas. So this is the relationship between rasa and bhava. How bhava turns into rasa. Now, the same thing is transferred all the way to other arts. Just as the actor does certain gestures on the stage, similarly in a melody, in a raga, different musical notes are used in order to create the bhava and for that bhava to turn into rasa. So there the vibhavas are the notes, sarigama padani, the different kinds of notes, the interval between the notes, the tal, the swar and the shabda. So all these things combine there to become vibhavas and anubhavas, and they provide you rasa. In painting, it is the color, the line, the perspective, or the way perspective is handled in different ways, which gives you the feeling of vibhav and anubhav, and it becomes rasa. Similarly, in other arts. So, this is the classical theory. Now, I'll take just another 5-10 minutes to complete my speech, so that I leave about half an hour till 2:30. I have the time, I am told. I would keep that for questions. I would like that you ask me questions, and for that half an hour I would like to answer questions so that we can have a dialogue. So now I'm going to address the question: is all this theory useful to us today? Does it make any sense? Can it be used for contemporary arts? Can it be used in films? Can it be used in modern paintings, modern music? So this is the question. Now, if you look at the definition of what is theatre, then the definition is that it is an art in which the audience sees and hears together. In painting, you don't hear anything, you only see. In music, you don't see much, you only hear. In dance, you see and hear, but then dance is considered to be a form of theatre or form of drama. So, theatre is an art in which there is seeing and hearing together at the same time. There is something to explore with our eyes and ears together. So it is drishya and shravya, as it was called right in the beginning, as it was defined as an art. Now, theatre has this quality that with this fundamental definition, it continues into newer technologies and still retain these two fundamental aspects of drishya and shravya, something which is heard and something which is seen. So there was theatre in ancient times or even now, but there is cinema. Technology has brought another dimension. However, cinema is also based fundamentally on seeing and hearing together. And all those things which were present on the stage, ancient, medieval stage or modern stage, are present in cinema in a different form, but fundamentally they are there. So the principles of the ancient art will apply to cinema. they'll apply to modern art. And they will apply in many ways because the primary reason is that human psychology has not undergone a change. You still feel the emotions along with your thoughts the same way as you did 2000 years ago. So when you read Kalidas or when you read even an older text, then you are able to relate to all those emotions which an ancient character felt, as we can see through the watching or reading of the play. So Shakuntala felt all those emotions which a modern girl feels today, and therefore the way of handling those emotions, writing the stories, depicting on the stage can be done. This is the primary reason why art lives through centuries. It is not something which disappears. Those emotions which engulfed our ancestors at a given time, of which a story is told to us, whether it be Ramayana or Mahabharata, are felt today by almost everybody. So Mahabharata is a story of the fight between two families. Ramayana is the story where in a family the brothers do not fight, but they look at the higher goal, and because of their looking at the higher goal, the ending is very shubha, kalyanakari, is something very significant, whereas in Mahabharata the ending is devastating. So because these emotions, because this whole setup of things is pretty much the same as it was thousands of years ago, this analysis of ras and bhav is something that still holds. So thank you very much for this speech, and now I would want you to put up the questions. Well, your question is, does ras have an effect on bhav?
Yes.
Now, I tried to explain to you that it is bhava which gets converted into rasa. You see, what is it that is happening on the stage? Tatra vibhav anubhav vyabchari sanyogat ras nishpatti. Because there is a sanyog of the acting, the gestures, the emotions which are expressed by the actor, all these things have combined to create rasa. So rasa is something which gets transmuted into, bhava is something which gets transmuted into rasa. Now, there are different theories as to how it does and when it does and when it does not. That's a very long subject and I could not have, gone into it. So I left that out. But I just gave you the very fundamental that bhav is something which gets transmuted to rasa. Later on in the next sutra, Bharat Muni says that it is the sthai rasas which get converted, sthai bhavas which get converted into rasas, and not the vyabhichari bhavas, but their presence is needed. Now that is a further exploration into the relationship between bhav and rasa. Today we had a very limited time, so I only gave you just the very fundamental and just a stating of the fundamental. I hope I am
Sure,
clear.
sir. Thank you.
Your question is, why did I leave out Shanta Rasa? Well, I left it out because I gave you the fundamental given in the Natya Shastra. The Natya Shastra states only 8 rasas. Shanta Rasa was later on brought in. Different people have different ideas about it. Some people think it was ushered in at a much earlier date in 2nd, 3rd century by some Buddhist thinkers. But we know that the chief progenitor of Shantarasa was Acharya Abhinavagupta. So he brought in this idea that every rasa returns to Shant and every rasa emanates from Shant. He took a very philosophical view because of his Pratibhagya Darshana, and because of that he said, just as everything comes out of Shiva and returns to Shiva, similarly all rasas come out of Shant and return to Shant. But strictly speaking, in dramaturgy, this is neither possible nor stated by Bharat Muni. Because Shanta means something which is happening totally within you. You see, when you are totally Shanta, then the Deha, the body, is also inert. It may be very alert, or it may be in a different state of consciousness, even a higher state of consciousness than the ordinary state, from inside. Your consciousness may be that, but that is not something which can be reflected in your body. That is not something which can create an anubhava. So what people do is they create a certain symbolic gestures, like gestures of kirtan, or a gesture of a abhay mudra, or sitting in a meditative pose to show that things have become shant. You see, this is how even today Shantaras is depicted. The anubhava of Shanta is shown to be that. So that is the real situation. Now Shantaras came into being, or was propounded by Abhinavagupta, and once this habit of bringing in rasa not on dramaturgical principles, but on principles of certain philosophic theories in which the theorists of theatre believed, like Abhinav to begin with, and later on others. Then they brought in several other rasas like Madhura rasa, somebody talks of Vatsalya rasa. But in the scheme of Bharat Muni, only those bhavas which can be depicted on the stage very clearly are taken into account. And that is why Shant is left. So your question is that we live in a world where things are taken in an interdisciplinary manner, where we go into music from literature, from one art to another art, or from one science to another art, things like that, isn't it?
Correct.
Now, please remember what I said about the difference between what is happening on the stage and what is happening in the world outside the theatre hall, that is in the real life, in Jivana, in Loka as it is called in old language, in the world. I tried to explain to you that the fundamental differences between the art that is practiced through a medium, whether it be painting or sculpture or any other art, cinema or theatre, but that is something happening away from real life. You see, art is not real life. Theatre is an art which is very interdisciplinary. It has been said in the beginning that all the Shilpas, all the Vidyas, all the Kalas are present in theatre. And you know that it is there. Any great film director, theatre director will tell you that they use all arts. So it is all interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary. But it is transdisciplinary as an art. All these things, they are different from the life outside. And I tried to explain to you the difference between our emotions and feelings and thoughts as we feel them in the actual real world and as we feel them on the stage. On the stage or in the theatre hall, the situation is different. That's why you go to see something special. As I said, things which are very unpleasant in life and which you don't want to experience or talk about and which you shun all the time, you go and enjoy them in theatre. Right? That is why, that's how business runs. I mean, Ekta Kapoor made all these serials by making women cry. You know, they go to cry to those serials. They know that if they can't cry, then the serial is not worth it. So this is the power of art. And this is the reality or the experience of art as different from the experience outside. It is certainly transdisciplinary because it uses all kinds of techniques and arts. But there is a fundamental difference between the real practical life that we lead and the world of art that we create. See, the world of art is not a repetition of the world outside. Otherwise, there will be no difference between an artist and an ordinary person. An artist is an artist when he or she is creating. Otherwise, he or she is a human being. But the moment he writes poetry, he or she becomes a poet or a poetess. And what he produces is something different. So this was your first question. Now you can ask your. We have to depict the bhava or the truth or the reality as we see it in the world outside. Now let me tell you that nobody wants to see in a play or in a poem or in a painting just that which is outside in the real world. दोनों अलग अलग हैं, आप दोनों अलग अलग चीजें चाहते हैं. You don't want the same thing. You see, art is not a place which wants you to discover reality. You have to discover reality by living in the real world, by experiencing the real world. But if you want to feel that there is a reality higher than the ordinary world, that there is a state of consciousness which is above what you feel in the normal world. जो पंकज गुप्ता या जिन्होंने को भी आपने कोट किया, उन्होंने कहा कि स्वभाव में जियो. तो वो स्वभाव कौन सा है? वो स्वभाव तो दुनिया का है. तो आप दुनिया के स्वभाव या अपने स्वभाव को देखने, फिल्म देखने नहीं जाते. आप स्वभाव को देखने नहीं जाते, आप राम के भाव को, कृष्ण के भाव को, रावण के भाव को, या वहां शकुंतला के भाव को, या किसी और एक जो नाट्य का कैरेक्टर या पात्र या किरदार है उसके भाव को देखने जाते और फिर कहते हैं कि अरे ये तो अद्भुत है। आप अपने आप को तो जानते ही हैं। इसी एक बहुत बड़ा कंफ्यूजन है और ये कंफ्यूजन भारत के लोगों को अब छोड़ देना चाहिए, क्योंकि ये रियलिज्म की थ्योरी से आया है। ये इसके पीछे एक बहुत बड़ा मार्क्सिस्ट थॉट भी है कि आर्ट जो है वो आपको एक आर्टिस्टिक एक्सपीरियंस कराने के लिए, रस के लिए, हायर कॉन्शियसनेस के लिए, विद्या की जानकारी, गहरी बातों के लिए नहीं होती। वो आपको दुनिया में क्या संघर्ष हो रहा है उसको बताने के लिए होती है। और कला इसलिए होती है कि आप समझ जाएं कि एक दुनिया में ऑप्रेसर है और एक ऑप्रेस्ड है और फिर आप रिवोल्यूशन करें। ये मार्क्सिस्ट थ्योरी है। इस मार्क्सिस्ट थ्योरी को बहुत गहराई से हमें पिलाया गया है, सिखाया गया है, और इसीलिए हमसे कहा जाता है कि आर्ट जो है वो परिवर्तन करने के लिए, चेंज करने के लिए। तो आर्ट चेंज करने के लिए है कौन सा? आर्ट वो चेंज करने के लिए है जहां आप इस ऑर्डिनरी दुनिया से ऊपर उठकर भी देखें कि यहां कुछ दुनिया में दिव्य भी है, यहां दुनिया में और लोक परलोक भी हैं, और मनुष्य केवल खाता पीता, परिवार रखता, पैदा करता बच्चे, सिर्फ इतना ही नहीं करता है। एक सामाजिक प्राणी ही नहीं है मनुष्य सामाजिक प्राणी से कुछ और भी है, क्योंकि भारत की दृष्टि में पुरुषार्थ जो है वो धर्म, अर्थ, काम, मोक्ष 4 हैं। वो केवल काम नहीं है, वो केवल मेटीरियल लिविंग नहीं है, अर्थ और काम नहीं है, केवल धर्म भी है और मोक्ष भी है। तो कला जो है वो आपको धर्म और मोक्ष की भी बात बताती है, और उसमें धर्म का, अर्थ का और काम का स्थान बताती है। सौंदर्य जो होता है वो कला में होता है, सौंदर्य दुनिया में नहीं होता। आप जाते हैं, घूमने जाते हैं, किसी को तो लगता है जंगल बहुत अच्छा है और किसी को लगता है जंगल बहुत डरावना है, लेकिन जब लौट कर आकर आप चित्र बनाते हैं जंगल का, तब आपने जंगल का क्या अनुभव किया है और आपका क्या भाव है उस जंगल के प्रति। और वो भाव ऐसा होना चाहिए कि केवल आपका ना हो, दूसरों को भी उसमें कुछ देखने को मिले, तब वो कला हो जाती है। तो ये मेरा उत्तर है। बड़ा गंभीर विषय है। योर क्वेश्चन इज, कैन थिएटर बी पेडागोजी? तो देखिए, थिएटर तो पेडागोजी है ही, वो तो शिक्षा देने के लिए ही है। नाट्यशास्त्र की कथा ये है कि लोग दुनिया में उल्टे सीधे काम बहुत कर रहे हैं, उनमें शिक्षा खत्म हो गई है, तो उनको अच्छे विचार देने के लिए, उनका आचरण शुद्ध करने के लिए आप कुछ ऐसी कला बताइए जिसमें देखने और सुनने दोनों चीजें हो। क्रीडनीयकमिच्छामो यत् श्राव्यम च दृश्यम भवेत, ये इंद्र ने ब्रह्मा से कहा, और फिर नाट्य वेद की उत्पत्ति हुई। और नाट्य वेद को कैसे साक्षात किया जाए उसके लिए भरत मुनि ने नाट्यशास्त्र लिखा, यानी ये कैसे हम खेलेंगे। तो सीधा सीधा वहां प्रयोजन ये था कि नाट्य शिक्षा के लिए है। वो आपको बताता है कि क्या आपको करना है जीवन में, क्या आपको नहीं करना है। ये जो चारों पुरुषार्थ हैं, धर्म, अर्थ, काम, मोक्ष, इनको कैसे साधना है। तो लक्ष्य क्या है जीवन का, हायर वैल्यूज क्या है जीवन की, उसको बताने के लिए नाट्य है। अब यहाँ समझ जाइए, जो अभी थोड़ी देर पहले बात हुई थी कि नाट्य इसलिए नहीं है कि वो दुनिया का की रियलिटी आपको बताए कि कितने लोग भूखे मर रहे हैं, कितना अत्याचार हो रहा है, ये तो बताएगा ही नाट्य। ये कौन अत्याचार कर रहा है, कैसे कर रहा है, लेकिन नाट्य ये भी बताएगा कि ये जो दुनिया में हो रहा है इसका हल क्या है। आया आपकी समझ में? तो पेडागोजी तो है ही। अगर आप नाटक कराएंगे तो बहुत सारी चीजें हो जाती हैं। अगर आप किसी क्लास में, छठी में, पांचवी में, चौथी में नाटक कराएंगे तो आप देखेंगे कि बच्चों को बहुत कुछ आ जाएगा, शुद्ध उच्चारण आ जाएगा, एक दूसरे के साथ काम करना आ जाएगा, थोड़ा गाना, हंसना ये आ जाएगा, अपने भावों को प्रकट करना आ जाएगा, सेल्फ एक्सप्रेशन बढ़ जाएगा, टीम वर्क बढ़ जाएगा। ये सारी चीजें नाट्य करने से अब स्वतः हो जाती हैं। तो पेडागोजी तो है, नाट्य तो हर तरह से पेडागोजी भी है, जो उसको करेंगे उनके लिए पेडागोजी है, और जो उसको देखेंगे उनके लिए वो रस है, आनंद है और शिक्षा है। आपका प्रश्न है कि जो बातें मैंने कही ये कैसे ज्यादातर लोगों में पहुंचे, व्यापक लोगों में पहुंचे।
बिल्कुल सर।
देखिए मेरा, हाँ मैं उसी का उत्तर दे रहा हूँ। मेरा YouTube चैनल है मेरे नाम से, भरत गुप्त, सबके लिए फ्री है, फ्री एक्सेस है। उसके ऊपर करीब करीब 270 वीडियो हैं इस समय, और लगभग शायद 150 वीडियो जो हैं उसके ऊपर नाट्य शास्त्र पर, नाट्य पर, थिएटर पर, प्राचीन भारतीय नाट्य पर, ग्रीक नाटक पर, इन सब पर हैं। तो आप देख सकते हैं, लॉग ऑन कर सकते हैं। हिंदी में भी हैं, अंग्रेजी में भी हैं, और वो सब मैंने दिया हुआ है। इसके अतिरिक्त मेरी पुस्तकें हैं 2-3। मेरी पुस्तक है ड्रामेटिक कॉन्सेप्ट्स ग्रीक एंड इंडियन, जिसमें मैंने एक तुलनात्मक अध्ययन किया है प्राचीन भारतीय नाट्य का और प्राचीन ग्रीक नाट्य का, और ये सिद्ध किया है कि ये दोनों ईस्ट और वेस्ट नहीं थे बल्कि बहुत निकट थे। ये दोनों लगभग एक ही प्रक्रिया से निकले हैं, और इनको मैंने बहुत डिटेल में लिखा है, और उस पुस्तक में पूरी संस्कृत और ग्रीक में, ओरिजिनल ग्रीक भाषा में भी कोटेशन दी गई हैं। आप उसको देख सकते हैं।
हाँ, ये भरत सर, ये जो आपका ज्ञान है, मुझे लगता है ये बिजनेस स्टूडेंट को, बिजनेस मैनेजमेंट में कहीं ना कहीं अगर इसको हम जोड़ें,
जी,
भाव रस जो ये सब की बातें करते हैं, तो जो समटाइम ये जो ड्राइनेस है, नॉलेज में ड्राइनेस है, उसमें रस मिसिंग हो रहा है।
जी हाँ, आप सही कह रही हैं, और इसके बारे में मैं कुछ सोचता हूँ, और कुछ दिन में कुछ क्या कहते हैं लेक्चर्स में इसके विषय में करने वाला हूँ कि बिजनेस की दुनिया या मैनेजमेंट बिजनेस की दुनिया में कैसे भावात्मकता हो, सकारात्मकता हो, और हम काम करने वाले सब मिलकर बहुत अच्छी एक आपस में एक ऐसा भावात्मक संबंध बनाए जो सबके लिए रसपूर्ण हो। ये ऐसा मैं प्रयास करके कुछ लेक्चर्स देने वाला हूं, क्योंकि जैसे मैंने अभी कहा कि नाटक में टीम वर्क होता है। जब आप कोई नाटक तैयार करते हैं, और जो भी करता हो, बच्चे करते हो, बड़े करते हो, प्रोफेशनल करते हो, तो वो मिलकर काम करते हैं, और उसका एक बहुत अच्छा मन पर प्रभाव होता है, चित्त भी बदल जाता है, थिंकिंग भी बदल जाती है। मैंने इसके बारे में कुछ उदाहरण भी देखे हैं। 10-15 वर्ष पहले हैदराबाद में एक जेल के अंदर कैदियों को 6 महीने तक नाटक कराए गए थे। तो उसकी स्टडी से ये नतीजा निकला कि उनके अंदर जो आक्रोश और घृणा समाज के प्रति जेल में और बढ़ गई थी, उसका पूरा निराकरण हो गया, और वो जेल से जब निकले तो वो अत्यंत स्वस्थ प्राणी थे, और उन्होंने स्वीकार किया कि उन्होंने गलती की थी, और अब वो एक अच्छा जीवन जिएंगे। तो ये उदाहरण है, वेल डॉक्यूमेंटेड है और इस तरह के प्रयोग बहुत हो चुके हैं। तो नाट्य का जो बात नाट्यशास्त्र में कही गई है उत्पत्ति अध्याय में, वो अक्षरशः सही है और उसका प्रयोग जैसे आप कह रही हैं बिजनेस मैनेजमेंट में, इंडस्ट्रियल वर्किंग में, सब में हो सकता है।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।